we're just waiting for our secretary, and we hope that our treasurer is going to show up too.
The new bolts coming in right now too.
Tim, right? Welcome, Tim.
What's that?
Good evening.
Are you live there, Tim?
Yes.
Okay. Very nice ceremony last night.
Thank you.
With
Fantastic.
it went well.
empty chairs. Great.
We thought that would be a nice touch.
Yeah. And I'm waiting. I'm not going to wait for Mary. I'm going to assume she's going to show up. And if she doesn't, it's not really that important because I have all her information. So I'm going to open the meeting at 6:01. This is the June 11th, 2020 virtual meeting of the North Bennington Greater School District Prudential Committee. And we've called to order. We don't have any public showing up online that I can see. So we'll dive into finance without Mary. The treasurer's report was posted, but it shows our balances as of the end of May, which are healthy, and we aren't spending any money yet this month, so they'll remain the way they are at the moment, which is ending account balance is almost $17,000, and an operating cash balance of $340,000, and everything else is pretty normal for this time of the year. We do have some expenses, and we will not be agreeing to a warrant tonight because we're waiting for all those to be finalized so we can create the checks for them. And we don't have a budget status report, so the other financial business is approving an amount for a line of credit. There's Mary. Hi, Mary. So I'm honing in on your report here. Are you ready to
Yes.
talk about the line of credit?
Yes.
Okay. Then please do go ahead.
Okay. So in the last 2 years, we have requested a line of credit instead of a tax anticipation note. The difference being the tax anticipation note, you take the whole amount, bank it, and you pay it back in full. You take everything you request, you deposit it, you use it throughout the year, and you pay it by the end of June of the fiscal year. It comes with significant interest. The last 2 years, the bank has suggested that we do a line of credit. And so you can still go through the same analysis, ask for what you want on your line, but you only take what you need. You pay it back, however, whatever you can pay it back at any point. But then you can't ask for it again. But nevertheless, the entire line has to be satisfied by December 30th. Typically, I've done it right after taxes are collected, and that saved a little bit of interest. That's a few $100s worth of interest if we do that. Typically, in the last couple of years, as we've collected taxes, I've made a prepayment against eventually what is due to the village school in October or early November, and then trued up according to the preliminary reconciliation at the beginning of December or at the end of November. Consequently, when I first started this, I thought, well, you know what? In previous years, we've never needed to take the maximum amount possible. But then in emailing back and forth with Ray, not knowing exactly what the budget may hold for this year, or the state funding may hold for this year, 350,000 is what we would qualify on this analysis. You can ask for it at the line of credit. If you don't need it, no big deal. You're not paying anything against that, but it's available should we need it between now and the end of November. To me, that's worst case. That kind of says that nobody's able to pay their taxes, or few people are. And who knows? Who knows what the future holds? So maybe we're better off being cautious and requesting that, unless the board feels that we should go back to the tax anticipation and take something and borrow it for the entire year.
Okay, so I didn't realize, well, I'd ask you about how long you had this money, and it makes sense because you've been paying it off by the end of the year, that it's due by the end of December, I guess, basically.
Yes.
But so if we had, because we were having a shortfall in property taxes being paid, and we needed to dip into, or we decided to choose the route of borrowing on this line of credit to cover costs, what would we do then at the end of December if we were still out that money?
We would then have to see if we could either extend that line of credit or convert it to a full tax anticipation. I don't know that process. But it would have to be borrowed. The flip side of it is that what the village does that other municipalities don't. Other municipalities make their education payments according to the state cash flow reports, and they make them in full. And if there's any shortfall, then it falls on the municipality to do the borrowing. In the village, we have always paid the Mount Anthony taxes in full according to the preliminary cash flow report, which is why it's always overpaid and we always get money back. But we have not, at least as long as I've been doing this, which isn't all that long, but we only remit the North Bennington graded school district tax to the extent that it is collected. But that would be the other change. And I don't know whether the municipality would have to weigh in on this if we say we'll make a change and the education taxes are paid in full completely and the shortfall is picked up by the village. Matt, does that make sense to you? I mean, is that your recollection of how we've done things?
Okay, that was a brief answer. Non-verbal, Matt agrees by sticking his thumb up. So there is also, based on your reconciliation of the property taxes, we were overpaid and we're due to pay what do we do to pay $18,000 to the village? $18,174? Or do we pay a total of 30?
Well, the whole 30, because the Mount Anthony portion of the overpayment went, as it always has been, into the North Bennington graded school account, because in prior years, it's always been that something has been owed in addition to the graded school district. In this case, both education components were overpaid.
Okay, so we've received money from them, from Mount Anthony. Their overpayment has been repaid. And
Yes.
it's in our account, now we have to pay it to the village.
Yes,
So one thing I suppose we have to do, although I'm not sure we need to authorize this, I suppose we should acknowledge that overpayment and that we authorize a payment by the treasurer to the village of North Bennington in the amount that she shows on the bottom of that sheet, which is $30,665.05.
yes. Now,
Correct.
I have one other thought, and this again is another change to things. As I mentioned, it has been the village's policy to only remit taxes to NBGSD as collected. There remains $5,700 and $5,722 yet to be collected on current taxes.
Yep.
Would the Prudential Committee want to consider that the village will make the graded school district whole this year, and that when that $5,700 is collected, it is retained by the village, in which case the overpayment due back to the village at this point is more like $14,000, $13,000. I don't know whether that $5,000 is significant or material, but that would be the only other thought that I would have on this, is that this year we could just say we're good, and whatever is not yet collected is the village's matter.
Are you proposing that we just take the 5,700 out of the 30? Are you proposing that we?
Well, I'm saying that that's an option for you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know that I have a strong feeling one way or the other.
Right.
I'm just saying there's one option for the graded school district account to retain $5,700.
Right. So that strikes me, we have to negotiate with the village about that. I don't know what their feeling would be. And it would probably help, it would help us by $5,700 in terms of what our ending balances are for this fiscal year, 2020.
It would, but all I would do is ask for 345,000 instead of 350, and I don't know if that's all that material either.
Yeah. It would change that amount, that 350. Yes. Okay.
I just wanted to throw out every option that I could think of.
Mary, I'm not certain how you get from the 30 something to -5 to 14.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should qualify that. 12 of that 30 is really Mount Anthony's money that needs to come back to the village.
Yeah, we'd have to pay that.
Oh,
yes. The graded school district amount is 18,000, of which could be lowered, to 13.
Right.
Sorry. Thank you, Matt.
I think that's somewhat cumbersome. I mean, if the school, if we feel like that's really a critical amount, and I don't think we're talking about 1.5% of what we're going to have to borrow anyway, or and then remember that it's ours and not theirs later.
And then is this a precedent for everything in the future?
Right.
Yeah, I'd rather keep it straightforward. Let's just make the transactions.
Mm-hmm.
It's tempting to take the 5,700 because eventually it'll come to us anyway if it gets paid. But it's a risk for the village, and I don't really want to put that on the village because the village has less money coming in than we do, really.
And then bear in mind, there's still a small amount from a prior year not paid.
Yeah. That's right. So I propose that we pay the 30,665.05
Mhm.
and just account for it in a regular way. Because I don't actually want to have to deal with the auditors saying, what the heck's going on here?
Yes.
Right? And,
Yes.
we're supposed to have as clean a relationship with the village as possible under the rules of the state, because they don't want us commingling funds anyway.
Mhm.
So I think we just keep it straightforward.
Mhm.
And so if I would propose that we authorize payment of the 30,665.05 that we were over, the Mount Anthony overpaid in education taxes to the village of North Bennington. And we do it by the end of this fiscal year, so
Yes.
we'll have a warrant at the end of the month to pay it.
Well, yeah, and I'm not even sure that comes out of a warrant because,
You just transfer.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
what happens?
but
Well, I
I
want to authorize it. It won't end up as a check, but I want to be
Yes.
sure it's got authorization in our board minutes.
Yes.
Okay?
and I'm going to verify with SVSU so that the accounting stays exactly as the auditors would wish it to
Okay.
be.
Yep. All right, so Matthew, are you still,
I'm here.
I just disappeared too on my screen. I don't know. At any rate, can we go ahead and vote on this to authorize that payment to the village of the amount reported on Mary's final reconciliation, which was doesn't have a date, but it was as of yesterday, 6/10/2020, I believe, in the amount of $30,665.05.
So moved.
I don't know what's going on with me. Okay.
Hello?
Okay, sorry, I don't know why I've disappeared, but I can't figure out how to get back at the moment. Now, the other part is deciding on what we want to do about this line of credit, whether we want to continue with the line of credit or whether we want to anticipate that it's possible we will need some of the money over and above what Mary was going to borrow. And therefore, if you look at the cash flow, you will see that in November, there's a cumulative deficit of $347,000. The 351 or 355 would cover all of that, presuming on the theory that you haven't collected enough taxes because some people are having trouble paying their taxes.
Mhm.
Correct?
Yes.
So it has a good rationale. Normally Mary finesses this and figures that the money's rolling in and that deficit will be covered by deposits of tax money. But in this case, I think we might just be prudent to decide that that may not be true this year.
Mhm.
And so there we go. Sorry, I disappeared. I couldn't figure out how to get back. And I think that we ought to do that. Now, the only question is whether we go back to our previous method of doing it as a tax anticipation note. That will cost us a little more money. As Mary said, it will give us the possibility of arbitrage, but the arbitrage never matches the interest in any way.
It will not
Shape or
even
form.
come close.
It won't even come close.
No.
So I'm going to assume that if we needed to extend this note, that we could do something to do that in December, and I would like the treasurer to report on her discussions with the bank about whether that is a possibility. And let me ask one other question before we vote on this. How many signatures do we need on this tax anticipation note?
I believe there was a resolution, I was gonna look this up and I had too much outside yard work to do. But it was great weather. There is a resolution that is signed by the board, and then that was it. And then just one signature, I believe, was on the final.
I can sign it for the board then.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I suggest we do the line of credit, because I think the tax anticipation note gets more complicated in terms of signatures, as I recall.
And I also would say that all of the escrow agencies have already contacted the municipalities to find out our due dates. So anyone whose taxes are paid by escrow are still going to be paid on time. So it would
Okay.
only be those who don't have escrow taxes, which are a fair amount in North Bennington.
Right.
But still, it's not like we won't have anything paid.
Okay. All right. So let's say you, Matt, and Kieran about how we do this. Do you agree with my proposal? We'll vote on it. I'm looking for discussion, and we'll have a vote on it.
I don't see a whole lot of benefit currently from doing the full thing. It costs more. It's worked for us in the past to do this shorter.
No, it doesn't cost more on the line of credit basis. Matt. It would if it were a tax anticipation note.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, right.
I'm saying let's not.
That's what you're saying, referring to. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Kieran, do you care to say something here on this, or should we just vote?
I mean, it just makes sense to do the line of credit, take it as you need it. Because who knows? We may be surprised. Maybe it's not going to be as impactful as we may hope. But I would just say stick with the line of credit.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll say that our resolution is to authorize the treasurer to borrow through a line of credit mechanism, $350,000, access to $350,000 for the board, for the district, for FY 21. Is that good enough? All right, all in favor? Raise your hands, I guess. Kieran? All right, that's all of us. Okay, so that's the treasury business done, I believe. Line of credit done, and Mary, you don't have to stay, but you're welcome to stay. I'm not trying to push you out. I'm just saying if you want to go back to your gardening, you can do that.
No, I will for a brief while, but I've got about 15 minutes and then I will have to exit. So until
Okay.
that time, I'm happy to observe.
We may well be done in 15 minutes.
Okay.
The consent agenda is next item on our report. There's only one item, and that's the minutes from the May 13th, 2020 special meeting held virtually. Would someone, I think we can just raise our hands to say that we're accepting the minutes as written. All right, that's all of us. Thank you. Policies, we don't have any, thank goodness. Chair's report. Okay, this primarily is about authorizing certain things to happen. One is I've been trying to get prices for doing some of the painting on the cornice, the scraping and painting on the cornice of the building, per demands of the health department that we get moving on this because there's peeling up there. And I've contacted and had responses from 3 different contractors referred to me by Renee Gordon at Supervisory Union. One of them came out and said, no, he doesn't have time and capacity to deal with our painting this summer. A second guy I talked to on the telephone, who's a larger contractor who has more capacity, but he's booked up till next year. He is supposed to make an appointment just to come look at it with me, but that hasn't happened as yet. The third person came and looked and has time, thinks he has time, and he's already working with a lift on another job. So he's supposed to give me an idea of the cost, and I am inclined, I think I'm entitled, given that I have tried my best to get 3 prices here. I don't think I'm going to find someone suddenly that can give us more, except there is a 4th contractor that I'll have to try and see if I can get a price from, or any response from them at all. To authorize contracting with this contractor if he comes up with a price and given a scope of work. The second part of this is that as a historic building, and this is the part of the building that they really care about, the exterior and how it looks and materials engaged there. I've talked to Ryan Garibaldi at Centerline Architects about making contacts with the historic preservation people at the state just to make sure this is all clear and provide our rationale, which is, ameliorate, what's the actual term? They're not going to remove all of that paint because these days that would have to be all scraped off. There isn't much option about that. So, abatement, yes, thank you, Matt. This is an abatement of what is up there by scraping off loose stuff and re-encapsulating it in a fresh coat, or a fresh couple of coats of paint.
So, Ray, thanks for doing that, but I'm not sure why we need any. I mean, I know that we thought we might need a judgment on the historical element if we were going to wrap it in.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask him to do that as well. We had a conversation about possibly sheet metal or possibly replacing boards in case that there were significant damage, which I think that would be okay with them replacing boards with boards. He felt that they were unlikely to like any sort of coverage, like sheet metal or whatever. But I think we would ask that just because, it would be nice to be done with this problem for forever. But because if we paint, it's just going to be continuing to kicking the can down the road to the next time it needs paint.
Well, another question I had, and of course I've my last call to the roofing company that I've been dealing with has been unreturned, but And I think they probably, you know, at this point, the thought of us getting that work done and or being able to afford it might be questionable, but the the other thing I noticed is that the state has delayed the conditions or terms of the lead stuff. And I didn't know if that was with respect to the water testing or if it was,
Plumbing, it's the water.
that's just the plumbing?
Yeah.
Okay. Just thinking that if we could delay for a year all of it in a legal way, we might still be able to wrap it all up into a single project, but you know. If
I don't think we can. I think this paint peeling is obvious from the road. And my dealing with the two guys who've come out is, you know, we've talked about the obvious place to start is the front of the building. And if there's time or capacity to go around to the south side as well, where there is no, these two sides have no gutters on them, so that we don't have to remove gutters. And the worst one is facing the school street. So I think from Tim's point of view, he needs something to happen this summer. And I'm inclined to do that and get it going so that we're obviously making an effort, and everybody knows the situation is fairly strange this year because of all the things that have happened and going on.
I guess the one thing I would add to that, Ray, if you don't mind, it'd be if you wanted to do it as a larger project, if you had it scheduled where it was actually booked or something like that, not just a possibility of next year, that you were saying we're going to do it and tell the state we have it locked in, we have a group coming to do it, and how we're going to handle it. That's the only other way I think you could potentially do it if it was actually on a schedule.
I appreciate that amendment, and I still think that if we could do the two sides that don't have gutters, don't have that complication, because they'll have to be pulled off to check all and clean up all that big, beautiful OG that's at the top. And then maybe we could actually think about getting the roof and coordinating the rest of the painting with the roof work, where you would have a lift and someone would get up there and take those gutters down, and then they'd start work on that, and whatever sequencing with the roofing people goes on at that point. And maybe that could all be done in one shot, probably next summer, if we can do it. I mean, that's if we have the money, because we may have to take away some of that money from those funds to deal with other problems, which are like not receiving enough money from the state to fund our budget.
That's my concern with going any further than dealing with this immediate problem. The roof is not immediate. It's going to be, but the lead is, because we've now been spending 2 or 3 years telling Tim we would deal with it. So it's got to be dealt with.
Yeah.
The question is, this contractor that you've spoken with, do they, is there a product that is particularly useful for this kind of encapsulation? Does it?
I have not asked about that. I've been thinking, what if we use a boat epoxy? Or at least an epoxy.
The more aggressive product we could use, the better. And then if in the future can find a way to then encapsulate or wrap it, we're not as worried about the rot that might occur behind some sort of facade of.
I think mostly I don't see any issues, just on the sides I've looked at more carefully. But there is the issue of the OG where it's behind the gutters. There could be something that happens there. And that's one reason why you're gonna pull them down to look at it and to work on it. But my only thought was, I know there's some really high quality products get put on boat hulls, and they've got to be pretty durable, so they're epoxy based, and we could if that will help. It's a little more expensive, but it's not that much more expensive.
We're not talking about a huge amount of square feet overall.
No, we're not. I think it's roughly 400 linear feet around the building, plus or minus a little. And, you're talking about, say, 2 feet by 400 feet, 800 square feet. And you got to give it a couple coats, plus the primer. It's not hugely expensive in materials. It's hugely expensive in the lift and in the scraping and preparation. That's where it all goes. So, is Jim still here? He's probably gone. He's Icon's there, but
Jim is still here. I'm still
oh,
here.
Jim. So, do you? One question: do you agree with my assessment that my talking to 3 contractors, or maybe a 4th in there, and only getting one price because no one has capacity for it this year, is sufficient for me to, if I have to spend, which I'm likely to, more than $15,000 on one stretch?
From my understanding of how it works is if you requested bids and somebody doesn't bid, then you've done your due diligence.
Right. I have to document it, yeah.
Just document that you asked them and people refused to bid. So documentation that you didn't just ask one person.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's what I'm after. So if it's the board's pleasure that I'm authorized to engage a painting contractor, I would certainly not do it without consulting you guys on, verbally over the phone or in some way. Maybe we have a quick Zoom meeting at the end of the month if it's possible, because we're going to have to approve the warrant at that point in time. I'd appreciate a vote of confidence. We give the chair authority to do this.
You possibly make contact with that second person you had in mind. If that seems possible.
That would be the 4th contractor I know of, and there's been no response from that person, but I will try again. Yes.
I just want some level of leverage with the single contractor who is yet to get you.
I haven't told him about the other contractors. Not saying anything, but that's okay. And he's probably aware that we would have to be looking for additional prices.
You have my vote of confidence to do that.
All right, Kiernan?
You got mine too.
Okay. Thanks. There is one other element to facilities here. Actually, there are 2 other elements. One is that I have authorized a purchase order for this is to finish up our lead and water issues in the building, hopefully. One is we determined that we probably should install lead filters for the 2 lavatories in the boys' bathroom, because the old copper lead, there was the old lead in it, in the solder. When they sit, pushes them up close to the limit. We don't want to go over it. So we thought we would just forestall that by maintaining filters there. And I found some filters at Webb's that are $150 each. We get one for each lavatory because they can mount, I think, right up under the lavatory. And the filters are rated for 7,900 gallons, which, given that we changed a 1,500 gallon filter for the water fountains and on the floors, I don't know. We probably only changed it once in a couple of years use. 7,900 gallons is a lot of time to go by, I think, and
That, as long as that makes sense, because they're not really pulling a lot of water out of those sinks.
right.
You know, if there was, say, a janitor or something that would come along and, you know, leave the sink running or something, that could be a little different.
Like me? Yeah, okay. Anyway,
It's kidding, buddy.
that's one thing. That there are two of them because I think it's easier to put them both under the sinks rather than plumb from one to the other, which you might be able to do. And they're half the price of the LK unit, which has a stainless steel cabinet that it goes in. It's harder. It would have to mount somewhere on the wall in between them and take care of both of them. The next part of that purchase is that I would purchase 2 extra filters to prepare for the eventuality that these would lose their usefulness. And there is a possibility of another purchase, which is these units do not have anything that tracks the number of gallons. So you either change it in a year or you figure out some way to figure out how much gallonage has gone through there. And one way to do that is to buy a small meter. Unfortunately, these meters are hugely expensive. They're $442, which, however, given the gallonage that these filters will take, you know, if you save an extra year, get an extra year on these filters, 2 years instead of one, given that they're $72 a piece, you, in 3 years, you pay for this meter. And I don't think you need a meter on both. I think you could pretty much assume that there'd be roughly the same usage, or you could put it on the one that you think gets the most usage and gauge both of them by that one filter. But I'm leaving that up to you guys to tell me whether you think that's worth it.
Well, my great
And one other point, remember that we do get reimbursement from the state up to a certain amount for what we have to do, the plumbing fixtures we have to put in. So.
I believe the reimbursement is $300 per fixture.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
You know, if the state is not confident that we don't know how much water is going through a line, and so
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we could sell it on that basis, maybe.
You know, I don't know how much use those things get.
Well, they get use, but they don't have a lengthy use, you know. For one, it's the boys' sink, so the boys are typically less fastidious about washing their hands, which I'm not encouraging, but that's the reality of it.
And the
And
flow rate on those faucets is
well, it's basically a 3/8 tube into the faucet, so it's
rated.
about two gallons per minute.
Okay. All right, so you know, divide that, look into that, and see how long the faucet would have to run
Right.
in a given year.
Well, it's 8,000, it has to have 4,000 minutes on it. Right?
We can do the numbers somewhere else, but I don't care either way. But I think it gets a little ridiculous. I think maybe just a scheduled replacement of a filter every year is makes more sense. You know, so now you're talking about $150 a year for both filters. And you assume you're within tolerance there. I don't think we need a flow meter or any other sort of metric for that. There's enough hardware under the sink already.
Yeah. Well, this is an inline flow meter, so it's not that big apparently. All right, is that your feeling, Karen?
I mean, what's the, is there, like, I was just looking up filters and like, stuff like that. Is there a minimum? I know some of them are showing like minimum of 8,000 or 9,000 gallons or 3 years of usage. I guess, I mean, in terms of that, looking at, you know, the length of them, you know, potentially a flow meter may be, you know, viable, at least on one, because that way, you know, obviously the one that gets the most use. Because I mean, if we get the reimbursement, I mean, say it's $300 reimbursement. I mean, 400 some odd dollar flow meter is really only costing essentially $120. And I mean, overall, for me, financially, you know, I look at the long term. I mean, you know, what's going to cost me less over the course of the time? That's just
okay. If we just took one flow meter plus the filters and the additional filters for the next use, we're under $600. So if we could get $300 per fixture, we'd be okay. We'd have it paid out.
I mean, that's because, I mean, if the filters have a life expectancy on them too, you know, like I said, if they're good for, you know, 2-3 years, or the 8,000 gallons, I mean, who knows? We may never see the 8,000 gallons in that expected life expectancy. So you know, it may last a year more than a year.
They claim that it's 7,900 gallons or 1 year.
Or 1 year, okay.
Right, and I think that's because they're going into a system that has no metric on it, so they provide you a change date. If you can verify that it's still within the rating, I think the rating holds.
Okay.
From what I could tell.
I mean,
if we require the filter in 1 year, then I mean, I was with Kieran on this one and was going to change my mind about the meter, but if the standard is 7,000 plus gallons or every year, then there's no point in the flow meter.
No, I'm disagreeing with you there, Matt. It's 7,900 gallons, or if you don't know that, you can meet it because you can run over it without knowing you've done it.
Oh, okay. All right. So it doesn't say minimum of 1 year or 8.
No, that's just a procedural fallback, I think.
Liability issue.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's do it with a meter on what we believe to be the highest used sink and get it done.
All right, and then I also have to replace the faucet in the 5th grade classroom because it had a problem in meeting the metric. So we're figuring that's probably related to its age. in that particular case, because it's a 96 faucet, which had higher allowable lead in the brass in the fixture. And we're gonna try, that's what we're trying to, in order to reduce that to a consistent, I don't remember the numbers, Tim may remember it better than I do, but
I
make
don't
it
remember it off the top of
consistent.
my head. I can pull it up. But
anyway, that's under the $300 per fixture, although installed it may cost us a little more. I'm figuring installation we can pay for. I ran into Neil Kenyon at Webb's, and he said he could do it after hours, after he's not working at the college, for both of these items. And the other option was to use Bill, but Bill is not working as of Monday, after Monday, so I don't know that we can get him back over here to do this. Bill
wait,
is
what about the 6th grade room? Is it the same thing as the 5th?
No, it's different because that had a leak. The cartridge was leaking, and before I got the cartridge replaced, I didn't realize it was leaking, but it had been shut off. So it was shut off when they tested it, and it sat there for a couple of months, closed off, and it is a line. It's like all the other lines down that hallway on the west side, but I think it just sat there so long that it wouldn't meet it at the time. I think it was that the one that it did meet it after it was flushed for long enough, but it didn't meet it sitting there, like it was over the standard, just sitting.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but
I can't remember either. One of them was like that.
I do know that the 6th grade room was shut off for a long time.
Yeah,
Just because we weren't using it, and then we turned it back on to get it tested. Yeah.
yeah. So that doesn't pass test now. I think we would have a new test of that that particular faucet with doing the standard treatment that you do, a test when it's just turned on and a test after it's flushed for a while.
Yep. Okay.
So we'll deal with that too. But
thank you.
Might understand that after all these replacements, repairs, whatever are done, that there'll be another test by the state. And if that's the case, then do we just not do that 6th grade one and assume that maybe it will pass? And if it doesn't, then deal with it then?
well, I don't know the plumbing exactly there, but because it's on the same line as John's sink and probably Pat's, I think, on that side of the building, I'm kind of figuring that they're all similar, and those two pass. So I figure it's likely to pass. Whereas I know that the 5th grade sink is probably an extension of the plumbing that's in the boys' lavatory, and so I can account for why it might not pass, because A, the plumbing fixture itself is old, and B, it's got old lines behind it that are smaller apparently. I don't know. It's just our hypothesis, and we're trying to sort it out. So.
I'll double check. I would guess that after we do whatever corrective measure we're going to do, they would want to test again.
And on the other hand,
yeah, I think you have to test it again after you've done whatever you're going to do. Yes, if that's what you're asking. Yes.
but if they're paying,
I thought you were talking about a general test, and I don't think that's happening.
if they're paying you $300 a fixture, replace the fixture. That's the other way of looking at it.
Yeah. Right.
It's no cost to us of the installation, or maybe even that's covered depending on
All right, so
we
that,
done with-
yeah, that's that, because that fixture itself, the faucet is less than $300, so there's room even for the installation. All right, so the last thing is also building expenses. I sent you, all the invoices that Vicky provided me, and then I sent my thoughts on those invoices, and I came up with an amount. And, but we can go through it, and you can tell me whether you want to do it differently. I just did that because I needed to think about it, so shall we do that? I'll just read off the items I listed in the order that they were in the attachment. So the annual testing and inspection by Albany Elevator, I argued we should pay that bill. That's $1,120. But the two periodic maintenance invoices from Albany Elevator, I thought were clearly operational. And so I thought we shouldn't pay those. Those were $400 some odd dollars a piece. $425 a piece. Atlantic sprinkler backflow inspection, I think we'll pay for that. Atlantic sprinkler antifreeze replacement system gauges and tag for the change. I thought the antifreeze is sort of an operating cost, I think, because it's something that wears out over time, or else the state sets a life expectancy on it. I guess they believe it wears out and needs replacing on the schedule. But the gauges and the tag, I thought we should pay for. So that was like $180 for the Atlantic sprinkler backflow inspection, and I said we would pay. And for Atlantic, the gauges and tag, $360. I thought we should pay. Control tech, I don't know. It seems to me that some of that was a transformer basically it ended up being a transformer and a wire problem on the third floor. And it took them 3 visits to deal with it, because the first time the technician thought it was just the transformer and reset it, and then it clicked off again, came back, ultimately he found that there was a wire causing a short, but he also felt that the transformer needed replacing. So he replaced the transformer, and then he had to fix the wire. And since then, it's been no problem. I mean, these things are all particulars, but I felt like we should pay for the transformer. So I felt like the rest of it was either should have been on the maintenance contract, or if he caught it sooner, it would have cost less. At any rate, that was my take on that. And then the Vermont elevator is a cost for the annual state inspection of the Vermont state inspection. They require this, and it is a fixed fee. They force these elevator guys to do this for a fixed fee, plus they can charge for transportation. So we pay for that in my book, and that's $175, $150 for the fee and $25 for transportation. And then the final one is that I think we should pay on my invoice for some purchases for doing some repairs on faucets, which cartridges had worn out finally, and repairs and swapping out the hinges on the bathroom door for the boys' bathroom. I put some sprung hinges on there so that it would close itself, and replaced one hinge that was just a standard ball bearing hinge because it was worn. As a standard hinge there, I replaced it with a ball bearing hinge because the regular hinge was pretty worn. So I thought we ought to pay for those hinges, but not for the cartridges that go into the faucet handles. Sorry to bore you, but that's it. That's what I got to talk about. So at any rate, that total was 1,900 something.
Total of which we are going to pay for, or the total of which
Total
we're
that
paying?
we're going to pay for. That's not the total of the invoices.
And does Tim have any response to
That's
that?
what I proposed. Now, you can argue with me and we can work it out, so. And Tim was here, he can speak to it, so, if he wishes.
I'm okay with most of that. I think this is always a discussion that Ray and I have around what's operational and what's, a functional part of having a building. The elevator and the fire suppression system, I think, are things that, that's what are needed. So, but I'm not gonna, because you guys have been willing to work with us on so many other things, I'm not gonna argue those.
Yeah. Well, you could definitely argue on the sprinkler that, it could be a landlord's expense because it's our building. It has to have the sprinkler and it has to operate. But I'm just going pretty much on when this was brought up, when Tom Martin was head of school here, I just said, well, I thought it was built into the maintenance and operating expenses of the school when we changed over. So I was willing to pay, I really see that we should pay for any of the inspections and that go on and so forth. I just feel like that propylene glycol that goes in there and has to be changed every 3 years, I think. I just refuse to pay it then, but I can be argued over and I can be defeated in a vote. There are two other people here that've got to vote on it, so you can change that. And I would not be upset. I just made my point, so you can have a different point of view. What does it run to? It runs to, the antifreeze was $340. It's another $340 if you want to add that in. The rest of that invoice I paid would put down to be paid. So.
I missed most of that conversation because Tim locked up and then I couldn't see him or hear him. And then Ray was saying, I don't know if it's my connection or what, but if the suggestion from Tim was that maybe we consider paying for the antifreeze, I'm okay with that.
Well, Tim kind of conceded, but I'm making the argument for him here. And I'm saying, you could say that it's part of providing the system as opposed to it's an operating expense for being in a building. And it's $340. That's what it is. you wanna pay that, that's fine with me.
Yes,
Yeah, I think we should do it. I mean, it goes along with it. You need it to have it operate.
Okay,
so are we, is that all that we,
what about the elevator invoices? Do you have any problems with that? Or post that? They, I paid the inspection fee and I paid the Vermont inspector fee, but the maintenance services, I just figure that's wear and tear. It's not. You could say that's not either because, but we paid in the past. We paid for at least split costs for the motherboards and so forth, and I think there is a need to replace or to figure out a way to repair those accordion doors so that they meet inspection. I believe we have to do that before the next inspection.
They've already been inspected and we passed.
Okay.
So
Great.
we went with the ever ready duct tape solution.
That's great. All right. Anyway, that was another thing that was on my mind, that we were gonna have to do that, but
No,
I didn't realize it had gotten through, so.
It had. So the accordion doors where they meet, there were a couple of cracks, and it was literally
Right.
just a little thin piece of plastic that was between those,
Right.
the hinge there, and we put heavy duty duct tape on both sides, and the inspector said that was fine because it wasn't a safety thing; it was just that you could poke through that little gap, and so we were fine with that.
It was to keep fingers out of it.
Yeah.
Mostly, yeah. Okay. All right, well, that's good.
And
Anyway,
they wanted an extraordinary amount of money for a new accordion.
Oh, yeah, now you told me that. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your feeling about that? My other two board members. That's another $850 if you want to add it in there.
I'm okay with that. I really don't, I think, we're setting some precedent for the future, but, let's just pay the bills. Move
I
on.
agree with that. I mean,
I
operating costs.
I will say that to have anybody come and do the elevator, they require us to have this kind of an agreement. So they
come twice a year. Yes.
They come and check it a couple times a year. So it's a matter of, even if we want to have an inspection, we couldn't have anybody inspect it unless we were doing some sort of a general maintenance thing. Because there's really only two companies remotely in our area, and both of them would do the same thing. It's
Okay.
Albany Elevator.
I'm all right with that. So I have that $850 in for those two maintenance visits. I don't know what they do in that time, but they do look it over and they would repair something if it needed us.
And I would just add how much of a difference in my first year, I think we had them coming out at least 4 times a year, and every single time to fix the accordion door that was, so that changeover has made such a difference.
Right.
In the
Going from the electric with a motherboard,
yeah,
that was such a major expensive mess.
It was thousands and thousands of dollars every year,
Yeah,
and now
way too much.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I'm probably still in that mindset of, we had to pay for all these, or at least halves on these motherboards, and it was excruciatingly painful. So if it's just maintenance costs like that, I'm kind of okay with it too.
Thank you.
Okay. So if I will add those numbers together and we'll agree to singular invoice, and I'll get that into the warrants for the end of the year, and that's, we'll finish out the year on, our costs for the building. And actually sounds like that's about $3,000, plus we've already spent about 17, so we're under 5,000 for the year, and that's a lot better than the previous year, which was 9,000 or something. So, okay. So all of us have accepted that we're going to agree to those items, and I will send what I've accepted to Tim, and he can get me an invoice for it that we can pay. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ray.
And the last thing I had there was discuss fiscal status, but I don't really know what to say about it. You know, I went looking around the state sites to see whether there was new information. All I could find from the Joint Fiscal Office was stuff that was dated April 29th, which seemed like really old stuff for the Education Committee and the Ways and Means and whatever else to be voting on to pass the year that passed, but that's what it is. You know, the shortfall in the education fund for 21 is around 8.5% of the fund. And if you transfer that to our budget, since it's not going to come out of property taxes, apparently, that's $221,000 that they might not pay us. I don't know if they don't find the money from other sources. Is what it comes down to. They have a triage sit in H959, which sets the rate, the yield. They have a triage there that cutting costs is the next to the last item, but most of those items before are pretty weak little barriers, I think. And then the final one is that you could borrow, the state can borrow interfund from the general fund to the ed fund to pay it. I'm hopeful that they will find a way through the, I think it's called the CR COVID Relief Fund from the CARES Act, or through which provided the state about $1.25 billion, find some of that money to meet this need, or additional money from another stimulus package from the feds. We wait to be informed of what financial leisure domain they've managed to come up with. And meanwhile, Tim and I have to execute a tuition agreement, which is authorized by our article in the annual meeting vote. And we have to come up with a figure for our sidebar arrangement on the leasing payments, right? And we have to do this at a distance, I guess. So maybe, Tim, you could put together a draft of the tuition agreement. And
I'm happy to do that.
We could, I believe we ended up with a 1-and-1 situation. So, no, what did we say? Our upper limit was the number we agreed on +1, and our lower limit was -2 or something like that. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
So I can put together drafts of the overall one
Okay.
and the additional addendum, please.
Because we ought to execute that before the end of June.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Okay, well, that's it, I think. We should adjourn,
I'll make a motion.
unless anybody has an other that they want to contribute.
I think Lori does.
Lori.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Okay.
Wait, Tim, I do want to say that video really touched me deeply, and it was incredibly well done, produced, and I think you've got a hell of a good recruitment PR kind of product there that you ought to. Just the way y'all did it, and my whole family watched it. We just loved it, and that kind of stuff is what I think what separates this school from others, and keep that up. That's just great stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
Mike,
hop on
Mike
top.
did an amazing job. Sorry, Karen.
I was gonna say I'll jump on top of that too. I mean, with my daughter graduating sixth grade, she was, as I'm sure all the other sixth graders are, they're bummed out that they can't see their friends or their teachers really for their last time in North Bennington, and having that, I shared it with my family, so they got to see it, and we're just really proud of being part of the community and part of the village school, and really looking forward to hopefully having an in-person graduation next year.
I could go with never doing this again. That would be fun.
But it was, it did kind of have some kind of comedic overture a little bit, having the seats there, and you and Liz addressing the seats as the students if they were there. So
Right.
it was well put together, and
and putting words on
from
the
a parent,
chairs.
I appreciate it.
So your daughter got one, did she not, Kiernan?
She did, yeah, and that was honestly we were watching it, and my wife was I get the math brains from my mom, and my wife's dad's an engineer by heart. So, for her to come away with like the math excellence achievement, my wife had shed happy tears last night watching it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it was well deserved. She's done a great job.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's great. I thought it was terrific too. I watched it, and then I watched part of it again. I really think you guys did a great job.
And it did reach down to parts of New York City and out near Utica too for my family that watched it. So I was asking people yesterday to subscribe to the YouTube channel. So.
That's terrific. All right, so I think we're done. And Larry, you can, if you need it, Jim Colkini, he has this tape.
This is recording,
Okay, great, thanks. I'm good, I think, but I'll let you know.
Okay.
and it also will be on Cat TV.
Okay.
All right. So I will be setting up a meeting for the end of the month. Maybe we can do the tuition agreement there, as well as hand over a check and pay out our bills, our final bills, which is the check we were just talking about for the building expenses. So that's the last one we have. And Larry, we owe you. So
Yes, you do.
I will owe you more by that time.
Hey, I'll be quick to type up my next bill then.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
You send it to, where to send it.
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So thanks, guys, and enjoy your evening and enjoy whatever you're doing after this.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Till we meet again. Bye-bye.
Now.
Bye.